Hi, this is Tim Hamilton, the co-host of the Maryland Crabs, and I'm here with a crab cake for your listening pleasure. What's a crab cake? Well, it's not quite a full episode, it's just a little snippet. Stay tuned and check it out. Make sure you check us out on themarylandcrabs.com. You can follow us on Twitter at MD Crabs Podcast or find us on Facebook at the Maryland Crabs Podcast. Don't forget, subscribe, rate us, iTunes. Go there now. It's the Maryland Crabs, and we've got a fun guest here today. We got someone who has been a fan for a long time, and we have been meaning to meet up for a long time, but I'm in charge of emails, so that has never happened. John's like, you ever get back to him? I'm like, yeah. But we have Satchel Kornfeld. I'm pronouncing that right?
Yes.
Right? And his lovely fiancée, Carolyn. And I didn't say Caroline, so she's not going to stab me. But but now in my head it's like Carolyn. And you guys are Montgomery County folks, which is why John's not here, because he has an attitude about it. So you came in all the way from
Tacoma Park, Maryland.
Oh, so you might call hippies.
Correct, yes.
Right. That's the law, that you have to be hippie from Tacoma Park.
We compost and recycle.
Yeah. You smell like patchouli. No, you don't. Well, actually, Satchel's all dressed up here in, like, so you're going to arrest me. So you're border police or...
No, I am another part of the public safety sector. I'm a volunteer EMT in Montgomery County, Maryland. I've been doing that for 7 years.
And so out in Cabin John, right?
Correct. Cabin John Park Volunteer Fire Department, finest station in the nation. On top of that, I also work for Montgomery County Volunteer Fire Rescue Association as a recruitment and retention officer, but the association is really a union for volunteer voices.
So how long have you been doing that?
I've only been the recruiter for about a year, but it's my full-time job, so typical Monday to Friday schedule, some weekend activity. And a lot of people don't know that the fire rescue service nationwide is heavily volunteer-driven, with over 70% of operations completed by volunteers responding to all types of emergencies. In fact, Maryland is one of the top 25 states in the nation with a strong volunteer presence. There's obviously exceptions to that, such as, New York City proper's all-career, D.C., Los Angeles all-career services, but a more rural jurisdiction such as Montana to Utah, they'll have a strong volunteer presence. Montgomery County, we're a successful hybrid system of volunteer and career personnel, a force of 2,400 people, and 1,200 of those are volunteers operating at 19 local fire rescue departments throughout Montgomery County.
So why do we have that hybrid system?
The way it goes is a history of the nation. You're looking at Benjamin Franklin, George Washington, they're all volunteer firefighters, and it stayed volunteer up until the 1940s. The advent of World War II saw a lot of young men go off to Europe and the Pacific, needing people come in as paid personnel to help fight fires. And nowadays, as job demands have changed, lifestyles have changed, we've seen a decrease in volunteering, but it's still a hybrid system where people are trained to equal standards for National Fire Protection Association ratings and doing the same thing. So it's a matter of everyone, both career and volunteer professional firefighters, helping the cause and helping the public. So at the end of the day, for a medical emergency, it could be a career personnel and a volunteer personnel, but they're trained the same way and they're helping someone, because the goal is to help the public no matter what the situation is.
I never thought about that, because I was in Western PA for years, and it was all volunteer, because It was very rural, and they didn't have... I guess, the towns were about the size of this bar, which is, by the way, Treaty of Paris. You like this?
Yes.
Very nice. Very lovely. But they were all volunteer. I never met any career firefighters up there. And I guess thought about it because the people who lived down the street from me when I grew up in Bethesda, they were volunteers. And I never thought about it. So I never knew any career firefighters.
It's a great career. I mean, you're looking at a starting salary of $45K and benefits, but as a volunteer, it's people helping their communities, neighbors helping neighbors. Obviously, there are slight differences in jurisdictions. Montgomery County doesn't do response from home at all, so all volunteers have a shift night on nights and weekends, generally about 12 hours, compared to other jurisdictions may do respond from home, or you're at the factory, you're at home, school, you got a call, and you're no longer taking that test for algebra. You're now going to put out the neighbor's house fire.
Oh, now when I was in Pennsylvania, and this was 25 years ago, so it's a difference. Not you guys, it's them, but I'd be at the bar with the locals, and then we'd hear the klaxon go up, and all the guys would go piling out and jump in their cars like, wait, I was just playing pool with you, and you can't stand up. And it's not you guys, because you look all professional. You got the badge, and you got the iron shirt and everything, so... Carolyn, you keep them in line.
Yeah.
Right then.
Yes, and obviously, I mean, the response from home system is actually still in effect in some jurisdictions, but Montgomery County, we're held to a very high standard because at the end of the day, we operate to the incident command system, we have the National Incident Management System training. It's just a matter of if you're a volunteering career. And there's slight differences in our chain of command. Each one of these volunteer departments has their own board of directors. They're a 501c3 nonprofit. But throughout the state of Maryland, you see that strong volunteer presence, especially with support of the Maryland State Firefighters Association, which is our lobbying group in the state of Maryland. And each state generally has their interest group that's protecting volunteer firefighter interests.
All right, I want to come back to that because I'm guessing, because we didn't talk at all before you came in. I asked what drinks you wanted, and that was it, because I didn't want to spoil it like some people do, whose names rhyme with Ron.
I don't know who you're talking about, Tim.
But I want to come back to the advocacy because I figured that's why you're here in Annapolis. Yes. But so if I look at like the rural areas of Maryland, so we're talking about Western Maryland, like Allegheny, Washington, Garrett County, and then over on the Eastern Shore, I assume that's probably that model that we talked about with rural areas, which is all volunteer. But then when you get to Central Maryland, which is Montgomery County, Prince George's, Anne Arundel, well, I guess, is there a hybrid system over here in Anne Arundel?
I believe so, yes. Each jurisdiction is a little bit different. I don't have the information on exact numbers for the state of Maryland, but...
Come on, Satchel. You know what? You're paying for your own right here.
That's something I'll gladly accept for the opportunity to be here. But that's just because each jurisdiction... Each jurisdiction is a little bit different. I mean, let's talk about Baltimore City. The city of Baltimore is all career, but Baltimore County has a volunteer hybrid system that works throughout the county. What's really great, though, is there's a Maryland Fire Rescue Institute, and that's the educational board that trains and certifies all personnel. So that is something that exists to provide the standards to that National Fire Protection Association standard and EMT class. So all firefighters in Montgomery County, and I am an expert in Montgomery County, are EMTs, but all EMTs don't have to be firefighters. It's an optional career path.
But say that again. All firefighters are EMTs, but not all EMTs are firefighters.
Correct. So, as I said, I'm the recruiter for the Volunteer Fire Rescue Service for the volunteer side.
Is that why you're here?
I'm trying to get you. Right. I think everyone should be a volunteer, and I think there's opportunities for us to serve across the state in a lot of capacities.
But I feel like that, it's sort of like Top Gun. When people went to go see Top Gun and they all join the Navy, think to be flying planes, and then like 3 months later they're swapping the deck. I have visions of me wearing the hat with the dog with the spots, and I got the hose and everything. No. You're wrapping up the hose after we're all done.
We all want to clean up after a fire to be successful, and I think everyone starts at a zero and goes all the way to hero. I myself started without any training, and already I'm a sergeant on Sunday night. I mean, I'm responsible for the safety and security of 6 other people and their training, but I'm also an ambulance driver, and I started volunteering when I didn't even have a driver's license. In fact, I was living at my
So you ride your bike with the hoses on your back and just...
Exactly. Or I'd walk. I was actually living at my...
the helmet with the light on the top?
How do you know all this? You found my old Facebook photos.
Yeah.
But I was living at my fire station for 3 years, and Carolyn was with me for that, and that provided quite an opportunity for the relationship being a live-in and having my physical address at the fire station while dating the love of my life.
So when you left, Carolyn, you have to go down the pole?
No, I never visited him over there, really.
Do you have those poles you slide down, or is that a myth?
We do have the poles, but our fire station is built with 21st century safety in mind, so our engine bay and bunk room are on the first floor.
Oh, well, it's not as fun. I mean, that's the whole point of being a firefighter is the dog.
Yes.
The fire engine ride itself, like the guy in the back, like Kramer.
And always wear your seatbelt.
And you just...
Safety.
And then the pole. Because there was one in Democracy Boulevard. There was a woman who lived next to me growing up in the 70s. She was dispatcher.
Yes.
And she took us over there, and sure enough, there was a pole.
The pole really makes it. Unfortunately, this was architectural design. They got rid of it, so it's been a loss to the Fire Rescue Service.
So you're in Cabot John.
Correct.
Cabot John is that corner of...
Seven Locks and River Road.
Right. And you know why they call it Seven Locks?
I don't.
It's the 7th lock of the C&O Canal.
Got it.
Do you know why they call it Cabot John? Look at this. You didn't study for this, did you?
I did not study.
It's short for Captain John's Mill, because Captain John, I don't know why he was a captain, but he had a mill there.
Yes.
And he shipped all the stuff out on the canal, which was 7 locks. You see what I just did there? I closed that circle.
Yes. It's great. I mean, and it's great being a volunteer EMT as well, so...
So you got the trivia and the volunteer EMT.
Yes.
So what's your day job?
My day job is a recruiter for the association.
Oh, that's right. So you got the...
So, I work in volunteer advocacy 24/7, whether I'm up here in Annapolis or I'm down in Montgomery County. As a recruiter, I'm recruiting volunteers, but what's great about my job is volunteers in Maryland can start at age 16, and there may be some opportunities younger at 14 through Explores, and that's the Scouting of America program. But there's a lot of opportunities for people at any age, and because the volunteer services are age and gender blind, we're able to take anyone, and they can help out in any way. Unfortunately, some people, they want to volunteer only for a summer. They're not the best fit compared to us looking for a 2 to 3 year time commitment because of the training that's provided free of charge.
So when you recruit, how do you actually do that? When you go to schools, you go to...
All of that. Schools, job fairs, career fairs, being out and about in the community. Montgomery County, we have the only recruiting station in the nation as well. So I have an actual office that has half of a fire engine in it. People can stop by and look at it, and they can get a feel for it. Plus, since I'm the recruiter, I'm available to answer any questions, and I represent Montgomery County. Because DC doesn't have a volunteer fire service, I can go into there. In Virginia, they don't take volunteers until age 18, so we're happy to take 16-year-old high schoolers in Virginia who want to come over the border into the better state.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're a transplant to Maryland, right?
Yes, I am.
So you're from Eugene, Oregon.
Correct.
Another hippie.
It is.
Yeah, so you're just through and through. I expect to see you break into some sort of fish-like dance.
We are not allowed to tie-dye our uniforms,
right.
Otherwise I would be wearing something a bit less pressed.
I like Eugene, I'm not going to lie. I like Oregon, like Eugene and Portland, although I hear that's hippie central, and then when you get out of there and you go east, it's Trump territory. Nothing against Trump, but just it's a big... There's little pockets there.
So you and I, once we get the show traveling, you and I will do the podcast episode in Eugene, but then we'll get Red Maryland to cover the rest of Oregon, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, they're going to do it's Maryland Podcast Week month coming up. I think next month. They sent me an email. I haven't returned it yet, but yeah. So yeah, we'll do a road trip with us in Red Maryland. The best part is John is I'm center left, and John's center right, and they call us both liberal. Yeah, and John's all deceiving because he's not.
Yes, that sounds like Red Maryland, though. Yeah. I mean, they're a great podcast.
Oh, they're fun. Yeah,
yes,
they're good guys. So you work for the county. You work for Montgomery County.
It's complicated, but I work for the association. That's a nonprofit that has a partnership with the county. But I am,
which is essentially, I don't say a lobbying group, but it is a...
No, that's a right term. Okay. Lobbying group and a union for volunteer voices. That's the way I put it. But volunteers are considered county employees in some instances because of our training, our standards, and accountability. So for some issues, it may fall under a volunteer discretion, but other stuff will go to the county level where we all operate under Chief Goldstein of Montgomery County Fire Rescue Service. So it's one team, one voice of the Fire Rescue Service under the umbrella of MCFRS versus a local fire rescue department, one of those 19 volunteer departments, or you're a career firefighter and you operate out of one of the 38 fire stations in Montgomery County.
So you represent all the Maryland volunteer firefighters. I
represent all Montgomery County volunteer firefighters, and I'm comfortable speaking on behalf of Maryland State firefighters who are volunteers.
Is that why you're here today?
Yes, it was. My plans changed, but originally we were going to be in Annapolis for a lobbying session. We're looking at increasing the tax benefit that volunteer firefighters get. Right now, they get a tax deduction of around $4,700 a year. We're looking to increase that to $7,500.
Nice.
And that's just a matter of, it's a bureaucracy in politics. I know Governor Hogan's a great supporter of the volunteer services. All the legislators are. It's just a matter of if we can afford it in this fiscal year or next.
Right. Well, especially in Maryland, which has some of the highest cost of living outside of San Francisco and Seattle and New York. We have an extremely high cost of living, and if you're a volunteer, that's a nice perk.
It is, definitely. I mean, there's a lot of other benefits, too, and looking at some of the other benefits across the board in other jurisdictions, Maryland has some of the best in the nation. What's also great is the fact that our training is free of charge. So hypothetically, if you go to a community college for EMT or fire, on average, you're looking at $2,000. That costs you nothing. And it's not a pay-to-play system where you have to cut a check and then get reimbursed after the class. You're never putting money down to be a volunteer. Obviously, if you want to get better equipment such as boots, radio straps, you're going to be paying for that, but we don't pay to play.
Right, so that's at your pocket as a volunteer.
I mean, good equipment's out of your pocket.
Right.
But you get good equipment free of charge through the benefit of Maryland taxpayers.
Is there, I see it also like a chasm between the career and the volunteer?
It really depends upon the jurisdiction. Montgomery County has a very great relationship.
Chasm's a big word, but is there's obviously going to be a line there.
There is a little bit of a line. Obviously, you have people who are doing a job and getting paid for it professionally and getting that paycheck versus people who are doing it for free. It's not to a level where I want to call strike breakers or scabs. It's just a change of time. One thing that I have to keep in mind is I can take someone and make them an operational volunteer in a year. The most recent recruit class had around 2,000 applicants in 60 spots. So it's very hard, at least in Montgomery County, to get hired on as a career firefighter. And everyone should definitely consider that as a career path.
So those are the openings for career.
Correct.
60 openings and 2,000 applicants.
Yes.
Wow.
Compared to a volunteer, we have 19 departments, 18 of those operational, that are always looking for personnel. And another thing to keep in mind is with our training, because it's done at that national level, if you're hypothetically to relocate to another jurisdiction, you could walk in the door of that fire station and walk out with the job in hand because you got the training and were an operational volunteer in Montgomery County or Maryland for 3 years. And I've seen that happen with people who have relocated and they've had a job offer in North Carolina.
Well, yeah, and the cost of living there is a lot lower, but you're also not going to be making nearly as much.
Correct. And, that was one situation, but it's not uncommon.
Well, I know, and I've seen this here, especially in Annapolis, when we talk to the police officers here, is we get police officers out of Pennsylvania and other parts of, Virginia, and they'll travel in great distances, and they'll work like 4 days on and they'll be off forever. But that always kind of puzzled me. That's a whole different issue than firefighters. Because police, you have to know the community inside and out as far as the people and everything. And for a firefighter, you really don't, because you just have to, that building's on fire and we want it to be not on fire. So
it's also, unfortunately, we see that with the public safety services, is a lot of those servants may not even live in the areas they're protecting, and that's just because cost of living is cheaper in a different jurisdiction.
We see that with the teachers, too.
Exactly. Right. I don't have a solution for that, and obviously that's a greater discussion.
Well, but that's similar to what you're saying, is giving tax benefits to teachers when they're living in high cost of living areas like Annapolis and Anne Arundel County, Montgomery certainly.
Yes.
Howard County, these are all areas where teachers, they make better, a teacher in Montgomery County or Howard County is going to make more money than someone in Anne Arundel, but the cost of living there is so much higher that they may be actually making less when you look at the benefits package, how much you're paying in taxes. And I imagine it's the same for police and firefighters, like you said, any public sector job like that.
Yeah, and I know all those jobs are obviously always hiring too. So I gave that example of Montgomery County being competitive, but again, you relocate to a different jurisdiction, it's a lot easier to get a job there, especially if you have that training that you got as a volunteer.
Well, I heard that argument all the time, especially with teachers, and they said, and I always dismissed it, and I've been thinking about it lately going, maybe I'm wrong, where they said, if Montgomery County doesn't pay more, or if Anne Arundel County doesn't pay more, then you're going to lose good teachers going to go to other jurisdictions. I always thought, no, you're not. You're not going to travel 50 miles in heavy traffic, the second, third worst traffic in the country. But I see police officers doing it all the time, where they're coming in from Pennsylvania up, Gettysburg, and somewhere up near, right across from Fair Hill, that area. But it does happen.
It does. It also may be a seniority thing, so hypothetically, that teacher, that police officer, they entry level, they're happy to be in the area, but down the line, once their family wants to settle and once they want to make that commute and sacrifice, it could be worthwhile for them to be in a whole completely different state. And then obviously that costs Maryland not only in tax money, but the community outreach and advocacy.
Now, would you ever move to a professional position?
I'm not opposed to it. I like my job right now a lot, but right now I really am happy at where I am, and it's a great opportunity because one of the things I really like about my position is, it's recruitment, it's also community education. So when I'm at a job fair or a resource fair, people are asking me about fire safety and a little bit additional knowledge that I can provide. For example, Montgomery County has been very successful in a program called Stop the Bleed, and that's a 1-hour casualty course, and that's done through FEMA and DHS, and that just provides Stop the Bleed. And with every class we teach about that, we always include the sales pitch. You can learn more by becoming a volunteer. So that way it's like doing a school book report. If you want to know more about the school book report, you got to read the book.
Yeah, but that's because I didn't read the book and I was kind of bluffing my way through it.
True. But we're all guilty of that. So,
but the job fair, you're sitting kind of pretty because teachers aren't going to have a job fair because, when you're growing up, teachers are not your friend. And not until you get older, you realize how valuable they are. And the cops, you either like them or, especially in communities like this, you're intimidated. But who doesn't love a firefighter?
Everyone does love firefighters, and
no one is ever going, freaking firefighters. You guys are tops.
I mean, everyone loves firefighters, and there's really no comment on that. I mean, everyone loves us, so that has us.
Favorite firefighter movie?
Recently, I'd like to say only The Brave. Because I'm an Oregon boy, I do like wildfires a bit more. I'm actually, being honest, I am a wildfire certified firefighter.
I know a bunch of guys who did that, and they were out there in California.
Yes, and I think it's the best one. A lot of people say Backdraft, but it's not the same. And Frequency was a fun movie, but it's only The Brave.
I'm going with Roxanne. I didn't portray the firefighters in a particularly great light, but it was funny.
It was a good movie. I mean, we can all... What about you, Carolyn?
I have no idea. Probably that Cars movie?
Cars movie?
Yeah.
Because it had a fire truck?
Yeah.
All right, you're reaching.
Yeah.
No, that's okay. You're fine with that. Satchel.
No, I mean, there's also great shows about firefighters. I think...
You're too young for Emergency One.
I know of Emergency, but I am too young for it. I think you've heard of Live PD. There's now going to be Live Rescue, which is in a similar vein of Live PD, but related to the fire service, so...
I went to New York right after 9/11, and it was right after 9/11, so it was a couple years after, and it was for St. Patrick's Day. And I'll tell you, the firefighters up there and the police were just gods.
Yes.
They walk into the bar and they could not buy a beer, they couldn't buy a drink. They were just absolute gods up there. I think they still are. And up there, it's all Irish, Black and Irish for the most part. You Irish?
No, I'm not. But, I mean, one of the things with the New York Fire Service, I mean, you go into a city fire hall, unfortunately, and you see the memorial to whoever they lost that day. And 9/11 changed everything, so it was huge in the fire service, especially for volunteers. I found the old logbook from us on September 11th, 2001, and it looked like everyone just quit what they were doing and showed up to the station, and they were on call. And by default, we can only fit 4 or 5 people on a fire engine, so people were just standing by waiting to assist the community on one of America's worst tragedies.
Yeah, so I knew a lot of my friends in college, they were from Long Island, from New York and New Jersey, and all my friends are Irish, so their fathers or brothers or uncles were all firefighters or cops. And they said after 9/11, these towns in Long Island just emptied out because all the firefighters just rushed, and they're telling the firefighters, stay put, don't, and they couldn't, they just had to be there to do something, so it was, and I can't remember how many we lost that day. It was hundreds.
I mean, 343 for firefighters, and obviously 3,000 civilians and other personnel. I mean, a tragedy, without a doubt.
I never thought about it, too. So you have, if you look at the firefighting community, because what do they call them? They call them jumpers? What are the ones, the fire jumpers?
Smoke jumpers.
Smoke jumpers. They're the ones out mostly in the West Coast. Like, we lived in New Mexico, we had the dome fire every year.
Yes.
And they were the ones who, they're the guys who go in, they burn something. Like, I read an article about they put a cook in there with them. So it's like all these guys and the cook. And the cook is the most important job because they burn something like 12,000 calories a day fighting these fires.
Obviously, I mean, I'm biased because I'm from Oregon, but I always think wildfire,
we don't think about
firefighters and just smoke jumpers because they're jumping straight into the fire. You're also strategies.
Screw that. That's just... I don't even know how that works. You're jumping in there with a hose and you're in the middle of the woods. You're like, all right, where do we hook this up?
Probably not even a hose. Obviously, you'll need to get an aerial tanker for that, but you may just have a chainsaw, a Pulaski axe, another axe, and you're just felling trees and you're creating a burn line. It is definitely the most dangerous. I think right now there's less than 100 smoke jumpers active because it's just not as proactive, and it's really quite unique. And
you have to be a super adrenaline junkie for that.
Definitely.
And I think most firefighters are adrenaline junkies.
Yes. What I always like to say, though, is structural firefighting is great, but wildland firefighting, you actually will sometimes set the fire to stop the fire, compared to if you try to do that on a structural fire, it's called arson, and then you end up in jail. So
you have, even over at the Naval Academy, I don't know if you know this, they have their own fire department over here.
Yes.
And there's actually, it's getting dark right now. We're doing this, we're recording this in late March. And there is, it's getting dark here on Main Street, but I'm pointing on the other side of Main Street, there's off of State Circle, there's this old fire department that's now I think think it's condos, but it's called the Water Witch. Mm-hmm. And it's a old fire department from like 200 years ago, and it's called the Water Witch, and it's a beautiful firehouse.
Yes.
But it doesn't house anything now. We have some churches over there that are condos there now, too.
Mm-hmm. And then in Annapolis, obviously, you have the State Firefighters Memorial, too.
Right.
And, I mean, one of the things is I'm from Cabin John. We have James Seavey, Chief Seavey. He was our chief for a long time. You know, he was the founder, helped co-author the Lavender Report, and that's really changed the culture of firefighter health and safety. The Lavender Report is looking at cancer in firefighters. Unfortunately, heart disease and cancer are the two biggest killers of firefighters. So by him co-authoring it, he unfortunately suffered from cancer himself, and ultimately...
Why?
You mean why
cancer?
Why cancer? It's just because what they've seen is firefighting from, let's say, the dawn of time until the 70s, it was unhealthy to say the least. You know, you would go in with maybe a 3/4 length coat, so just a coat that was covering your ankles up. You didn't have a self-contained breathing apparatus. You weren't protecting yourself against respiratory stuff. And when the fire is burning, it can burn anything from bad chemicals to the ash to the soot.
Asbestos.
Exactly.
I guess asbestos doesn't burn, does it? That's the whole point of it, right?
It doesn't. It's not supposed to burn, but I mean, if it's a bad enough fire, and also if you're in the 50s or 60s or 70s and not aware of this, obviously, and so that was seen an increase in firefighter cancer rates. Nowadays,
we saw that after 9/11 too. Is the cancer rates were just astronomical?
They still are. I mean, they're going down because
people are dying.
People are dying, but we're now aware of it. Unfortunately, the fire service can be a slow-moving animal in just the way it changes. So that culture is occurring quickly enough. I mean, one of the things we're saying firefighters. 10, 20 years ago, we would have said firemen, but that's also a bit of a sexist and outdated term because firemen are in trains stoking the engines. It's all about firefighters because we want to be inclusive. Stepping back, though, to the Lavender Report, it's just talking about gross decons. It's using baby wipes on your arms, hands, legs, around your neck, and it washing your hood and washing your gear so you're not exposing yourself to chemicals that can ultimately kill you. The Lavender Report is key in making sure that there's successful strategies. And then on top of that, mental health as well as physical health. So you don't want to take the job home with you every night and just cause stress for yourself, your family.
I have a lot of friends who are police officers, and they see a lot of stuff. I mean, they have days where they don't see anything, and it's just paperwork. But, I remember I have a good friend who was the first responder at the Navy Yard shootings and police officers in D.C. and Baltimore, and they see a lot of stuff. And I think it goes with the firefighters. Not only do you see, everything, like, you will see deaths, then you'll see the destruction. But also, I think that adrenaline, although we were talking about adrenaline junkies where you're hooked on it, I think sometimes that's an exhausting way to live, to be on that heightened awareness several times a week for hours at a time. That's got to be mentally exhausting.
Definitely. I don't know enough about that with the studies. I know, again, the International Association of Fire Chiefs, publishers of the Yellow Ribbon Report, they've done some stuff on the Lavender. The Lavender Report is for cancer prevention. The Yellow Ribbon Report is for mental health awareness. But, they've looked at the alarm. So if someone's sleeping overnight in the fire station, because generally firefighters do 24 on, 48 off. So if the alarm goes off at 3 a.m., it's easier to get a soft, gentle tone than that blaring alarm clock. And studies have shown that can decrease life expectancy by even a couple minutes, that alarm at 3 a.m.
The loud one?
The loud one, yeah. So that's why it's supposed to be a gentle, soft, soothing tone.
So let me get this straight. We've gone from that klaxon like, and now
to wake you up and still obviously respond to someone's emergency to assist the public.
I'm just picturing your chief shaking you gently awake going, hey, Satchel, come on. Let's go, buddy. Fire.
That's happened when people have fallen asleep during a call or slept through an alarm, but we'll leave no one behind who's qualified to assist in that emergency.
Right.
And it's more going to be a gentle shaking instead of just a soft breakfast in bed type wake up.
He's pictured passing out granola bars as you're getting down there.
Your mental health is key. I mean, you're right. It's the stress and the environment. It can be stressful, and it's just having the right tools and resources, an employee assistance program or critical incident stress management, so there are mental health resources at the end of the day, and not just physical resources.
I was arguing with someone about this the other day about mental health in this country, and that is something that is going to be one of the top 5 issues to talk about over the next few years. And someone was kind of scoffing at that, and they just said, previous generations for millennia, you've had people who have lived their lives and they don't have the problems that we do now with mental health. I'm like, we don't know that, number one. Number two, our lives have become much more complex in a very short amount of time that we didn't have to before. It used to be, for example, I can never pronounce this. What's it when a bunch of houses burn at once? Conflagration?
I'm blanking on the term myself.
I can't pronounce it, so I feel stupid. I might edit that out. But we're living in denser populated areas right now, and these fires can be, devastating.
Well, we're going from a brush fire to a 5-alarm fire by default.
Explain that to me. I was trying to explain it to my kids. My son said the other day, he goes, "What's the difference between a 1 alarm and 2 alarms?" Well, there's 2 alarms on the bad ones and 1 on the. But I didn't know. I think it is. So let me take a stab.
We'll just go with that escalation because it depends upon the severity of a fire.
I thought that it was the number of companies that responded. That like a 1 alarm was like 1 company and a 2 alarm was 2 company alarm.
I think that could unfortunately be a bit of stereotypical knowledge because
I don't know anything.
For a basic fire, you're going to have a set number of apparatus, engines, tower, truck, rescue squad respond, and then obviously if it gets more severe. So if you have a brush fire that can be contained by a single engine compared to an apartment building going up in flames, you're going to need a lot more personnel to deal with that apartment building by default. So we're just going to drop more alarms and drop more tones. Obviously, each jurisdiction could have different definitions, so I don't want to give a blanket definition, but for ease of conversation, more alarms, the more severe it is.
That's what I figured. Sort of like burns. I want a first-degree burn, and I want a third-degree burn.
Exactly.
So when you see like these international incidents that happen, I always thought about that is when you look at something that happens that's a catastrophe internationally. And I'm thinking specifically that London fire about 2 years ago. Is that the Grenfell Towers or something like that?
I know what you're talking about.
Which is catastrophic. We're talking about, in London, which is the most international city in the world, and it's one of the wealthiest cities in the world, and you have an upper middle class or upper class tower apartment building burn, and like all these people died. And it was just whenever anyone dies, it's tragic. But if that happened in like the third world, you'd be like, oh, well, that's too bad. But like when it happens in affluent country, I kind of look at that as the corruption of the builder and what happened. But do you as firefighters look at that and just kind of shudder and just go, oh, people don't know how easy that is to happen here or
I definitely don't want to provide false information. At the end of the day, it's a tragedy. So you look at that, you look at the after action report. I always look at, the ghost ship fire in San Francisco.
What was that?
It was an art house collective. I think around 50 people died, and they just were not in code. Yet if they had been in code or been aware, the place I think went up in smoke in 6 minutes, and a lot of casualties because there weren't proper exits. Just much like the Triangle T-shirt fire of the early 20th century.
Oh yeah. That was the one that changed everything.
Exactly. Unfortunately, we're changed by tragedy. We're not changed by good ideas. The good ideas of successful operations we don't hear about because everything went textbook. But 9/11 was a tragedy, and I come back to that, but everything changed after 9/11 because we had to change our instant command system. We had to make sure stuff was implemented, and we had to make sure that different jurisdictions who showed up either at the Pentagon or Ground Zero could talk to one another because there were Montgomery County units at the Pentagon assisting for what was a crisis of the nation.
On a different frequency.
And now everyone has that ability to talk to one another. Now, by default, Fairfax and Montgomery County don't need to talk to one another if there's 2 different calls at the same time because it doesn't relate to them. But if we work together in mutual aid, we're going to have that capacity instantaneously to be on the same frequency. And, emergency management operations can take precedent. Or, at my station, we have special operations, so we do swiftwater rescue on the Potomac. Everyone's able to be integrated from Fairfax Rescue, Montgomery County Rescue, and the Park Police have their Eagle, and they're providing aerial support. The Eagle is the Park Police helicopter.
Well, I think what you're talking about is the changes that are made. And if you look this is the Treaty of Paris, so you've never been to Annapolis. I'm going to give you a quick one here. This is Main Street right here, and all these buildings are like 300 years old. So they're historic, obviously, and they were built, like if you buy a house up here, you don't have closets, you don't have basements, you don't have anything. It's just, these are colonial houses. They're not replicants. replicants, like we're watching Blade Runner replicas. So if you look over here in the corner, you'll see the sprinkler system that's retrofitted here. And that's an issue here, and I've some friends in Ocean City where they had to deal with this as well, is that now they're requiring the addition of all these fire suppression systems that do not fit neatly into 300-year-old buildings, and people worry that it's going to mar the integrity and the look and the feel of a historical Annapolis. But, the conservation, God, I missed it again. But if there's a fire here on Main Street, and you've seen this happen in Ellicott City, you would see, we've had a couple fires. The Zachary fire down here in 2005 or 2006, that could have been incredibly bad, but the fire department put it out. But these buildings are all connected, so it would just jump from one to another. So I think, especially on the East Coast as opposed to the West Coast, where we have these colonial towns that go back hundreds of years, it's hard for us to wrap our mind around that, because we don't, it's until something happens, you're like, well, why do I have to retrofit? That costs a lot of money and I don't have it. You're saying, well, you're saving lives. They're like, yeah, but it looks like shit.
Or wired smoke detectors. Sprinkler systems are great, but, if you don't have a working smoke detector, don't check it regularly. You always want to have a fail-safe. So I think a matter of personal safety, and there should be a balance. You don't want to necessarily revamp everything if it's especially can't be done, but 9 times out of 10 is probably the right choice to make.
I feel so bad. So we're redoing our basement, and we've had floods and everything. It's a whole thing. And our smoke detector started chirping, and I replaced all the batteries at all of them. They're still chirping. So I'm going to take them down tonight, and I'll fix them. And that was like 3 months ago. So you can arrest me or something?
No, I'm not a fire marshal. But the state fire marshal of Maryland, he's a great guy. So
no, he'll cut me in. But if they would just, so it wouldn't chirp at 2 a.m. Like, just how hard is it to have a smoke detector that just doesn't chirp? Like, it just.
That's a design question. I'm not an inventor. Carolyn, are we working on the new smoke detector?
You could.
Why not?
You would be rich. There's actually a reason for it. I don't know what it was. I looked it up once. There is a reason why it goes off at like 2 a.m.
Well, they also expire. So if they're more than 10 years old, you need to change them.
Yeah, we have a new law or something that came down last year or 2 years ago. My friend owns a hardware store, and he got a rush on them because it was some 10-year rule or something like that. I remember, so they came out with them in the early 90s. The technology was, because there's technology in firefighting just like anything else. It was, they're called fire cams, I guess. And I remember I worked for a TV station at the time, and we were raising money for fire cams. And they were basically, I won't say infrared, but then wouldn't everything be red because you're in the fire? But it was like when you go in, you can't see anything. So the firefighters had this thing that looked like an old school digital
I know what you're talking about. The thermal cameras. And
that's what it was.
All suppression pieces, be it an engine, truck, or tower, have them. And they're big handheld devices. They look like a, Super 8 camera on steroids.
Right, that's exactly what it looked like.
What's fascinating is those ones cost around $10,000. Los Angeles County, through support of their Firefighters Association, they've been able to outfit all their personnel with them. And each one of these costs around $300-$400. Now, they're handheld, about the size of your standard smartphone. But they're supposedly going to be great in search and rescue operations. Now, I think those handheld versions may not be as effective as camcorder versions, but it's better to give the tools to the personnel who have a chance to use them and go from there. Because obviously when you're fighting a fire, not everyone just has a hose line. You have other people doing search and rescue operations. You may be breaching the surrounding areas. You may be putting up ladders. You're going to be doing a lot on a fire ground. It's not just 2 people going in with a hose to put out water, because they may need to go up some stairs and find out where that fire is, or there could be other stuff going on. Also, again, bring it back to Montgomery County. We get over 100,000 calls a year, but 70% of those are medical calls requiring a paramedic beyond than someone who can just spray water on a fire. So none of those medical emergencies could be anything from a trauma to a car collision to cardiac issues to general unwellness.
We had a horrific fire here 2 years ago. Around this time, and it was over on the other side of town. Our town's the size of this bar, and but there's some very huge houses over on the water, and the folks there. It happened on, I think it was in February, because it was around Valentine's Day, and the folks there had their Christmas tree up still, and they hadn't watered it forever, so it was crispy, and that thing went up, and it was like 2 adults and 4 kids, and it was an inferno. And that really shook the town. When you have it, because fires happen.
Yes.
But when you have something like that, that's avoidable, and nothing worked. You had a Christmas tree with lights that just went up, and the fire suppression system didn't exist. I mean, the house is like a 5,000 square foot house. There were kids who were sleeping over who weren't supposed to be there. It was awful. It really shook everyone up.
And unfortunately, we provide fire education in schools, but we don't really continue that into the everyday setting. I think everyone knows to call 911 if you see something, say something, but that worked for a suspicious package or action. Do we want to provide something similar to the general public in regards to community fire education? Because one of the things that you said earlier is everyone loves firefighters, but community policing is a method of law enforcement officers being involved in the community. And people bring firefighters cookies, food donations, everything, but we don't have the same thing of community fire education or prevention besides what's done in our school system, which is great. But what do we do for that, married couple who just want to know more about what they can do to be fire smart so it doesn't happen to them?
But no one thinks about that. No one. I got a family. I've got 2 cats. I've got my new pool table, which I love more than my family and my 2 cats. And I never, if I take off stuff in my head, I'm never what can I do to make this house less flammable? I just never think about it. But if someone came out and said, hey, you came over to my house and looked around and went, what the hell, dude? And I'm like, oh, all right, maybe I'll...
fire departments were a community resource to be used. So, if God forbid there's a power outage or something and someone needs electricity or medical necessity, it's more likely that there's at least a generator and a constant supply of electricity so you can get that care there. And a lot of departments will do neighborhood inspections upon request. It's just something you need to schedule. Being an emergency management professional myself, I obviously believe in FEMA DHS. You are the help until help arrives. And so being proactive in the community and engaging the people. So having a plan in place, being prepared, and knowing what to do in a disaster, be it man-made or natural. But also, this is my wheelhouse. This is my profession. That's what it says on LinkedIn. So
I always think about... I think it was an episode of Friends, which I hate to admit that I had watched at one point, but where she's dating a health department guy. And wherever they go to a restaurant, he starts pointing out the things and that's wrong, and they all march out. And I just picture you walking to houses, looking around, going, "Holy shit! Look at this! They are going to go up like an inferno."
I don't think I'm that bad yet. Carolyn can attest to that.
No, he's not that bad.
Boy, this is your fiance, and you guys fight like this? Oh my god! Good luck with that. So what were you doing today?
So I was just in the office today. Because of the nature of my business, a lot of stuff is done online. We have a strong web presence. We're doing a strong marketing campaign. On average, I'm getting 100 plus leads a month. So it's phone calls, emails, being available, doing a little bit of research as well. We partnered with a great marketing firm called First Arriving, and so they handle a lot of our marketing stuff because the nonprofit I work for, we're 3 employees. So there's just not there's too much to do for more people, but we don't have the budget to hire more because it's a nonprofit, exactly. And on top of that, typical 10 to 6 job. And I like my job too. And then just coming up to Annapolis today to talk about that, planning some events for statewide recruitment day, which occurred on April 13th and 14th. And that's just a statewide recruitment weekend for all volunteer companies in Maryland. There's over, I want to say 200 volunteer departments in Maryland, and that's over... probably 50,000 people if I would pull the numbers correctly.
Is it really?
I think so, yes. I didn't get a chance to run that complete report today, but...
I tend to believe you.
Yes. And that's the thing is, there's places such as Montgomery County all the way up to Queens Anne County and everywhere. You got a station in Kentlands, a PG, and there's a bit more of the Wild West, but they do some interesting stuff and being an all-volunteer department 24/7.
So if someone wants to volunteer, what do they do?
So if they want to volunteer, they can obviously find us online at joinfirerescue.com, or they can go to makemeafirefighter.com, and that's a tool through the National Volunteer Fire Council, and that's a basic search tool. It's great because it's going to pull up opportunities related to both EMS, emergency medical services, and fire rescue services. But makemeafirefighter.com or joinfirerescue.com, and if neither of those work, then obviously Google can be your best bet. And with that, we take everyone, so it's a matter of 16 plus and a willingness to help out your community, and generally a 3-year commitment. And as I said, the training is provided free of charge, but it's demanding. EMT takes over 165 hours, and fire class takes around 165 hours as well, but it can be a savings of around $4,000, good for around 6 college credits per course, and you're helping out the community and going from there.
That is some recruiting right there, folks. Look at that. I'm ready to join.
I hope so. You have my card, Tim, so we'll go from there.
All right, hey, Satchel, thank you for coming out. This is great. I love that you listen. I love that you email. I love that you came out. You're a lot of fun. And Carolyn, keep them in line. I'm glad you came out, and I'm glad you came to Annapolis. So this is great. You can come on again, right?
Definitely. Yeah, we'll be here again.
All right, folks. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
This has been the Maryland Crabs podcast with Tim Hamilton and John Fernay. Sure to follow them in all the regular places, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and online at themarylandcrabs.com. Take a moment to rate us on iTunes. Now, get the hell out of my kitchen. Seriously, go!
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.